Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to see a game happen between Gkchessclub and Vladimir Akopian. This game started with 1 d4, black played d5, white played knight to f3, and knight to f6. And this is also kind of a model game on how to play against London system. There is a setup Akopian used to play in most of his games. So we will learn what are the typical ideas that are there in the specific opening setup as well. So white goes bishop f4. At this moment, black immediately responds with c5, striking back in the center, asking questions what they are going to do with the pawn. So white defends it with e3, because c3 would have been like more, like let's say, drive. It will go into some equal drive pawn structure. So more often e3 is the move which, like, we can try to keep imbalances even if the pawn trade happens. So after e3, black played the move knight c6, keep developing the pieces. White played c3. There are some other moves as like dc5, knight d2, or even c4 as well. But in the game, Kamsky chose to play the move c3. Black immediately developed their queen to b6, targeting the b pawn. And then white played queen to b3, trying to exchange the queens. And in this opening position, in this particular setup, black often closes the center with like pawn to c4, trying to threaten the queen. And white played queen c2. And there is another endgame which often white can also get into, which is queen takes b6, where black will take back with the a pawn. And then one of the very easy plans for black after this is going for b5, b4, trying to activate their knight. And this position has been considered as like already a slightly better version for black, because eventually black gets the open file. Even if white kind of tries to stop that plan, black can in the game eventually anyway achieve that with some sort of b5, b4 using the pin on the a file. So this is one simple idea. If the queens were exchanged in that position, how we can continue. White played queen c2 after c4. They're basically saying, okay, like, I'm right now provoking the move pawn to c4. This could be a long-term target for me. Once your pawn is pushed, I can try to challenge it in the later cases with here or there. These are two typical pawn breaks in this position white can try to do in order to challenge black's pawns. And here there is a very good tactical move black has. So if you want to find, you can try to pause the video right now and then try to find what's the best move for black. Okay, the move that happened was bishop to f5, and it's a very typical tactical motive where we are basically saying, if you take the bishop, I'm going to take the pawn and then win the rook. And there is one little thing important. After taking the bishop, there is no queen to c8 checkmate because the knight has already developed. This will be already a winning position for black. We will just win the rook and then we will be exchange up, and then we can just continue from there. So in the game, white after bishop f5, white did not take the bishop. White just played queen c1, starting to protect this pawn. And black here played an important prophylactic move, h6, playing against knight to h4. Because more often, let's say if we play something like e6, which is also playable, there are always some sort of knight h5 for things we have to think about. Positionally, if the knight were to be traded for the bishop, then one of the plans from white side is going for the e4 break in the long term, and the very good bishop in the long diagonal, which is controlling some crucial squares, will be gone. So when we play h6, black is trying to keep the bishop intact. If any knight h4 happens, now we have the square to back up. So white plays h3, trying to go for the similar sort of plan. Black plays e6, and here white develops the knight, black develops their bishop, bishop e2, castle, and castle. Here all the minor pieces has been developed, and we have to kind of try to come up with a plan at this point, both of them castles. So one of the main plans in the middle game we will often try to look for is try to create pawn breaks. Basically we exchange pawns and then try to get our pieces to much more active squares. One of the typical pawn breaks white most often tries in these positions is e4 and b3. But at this position b3 is little bit critical. They can definitely try that. But whenever they go for b3 pawn break, they have to worry about c3. Like in long term, the c3 could be a potential target for black pieces. So by developing the pieces in this way, what black was managed to achieve was this e4 pawn break. White will not be able to achieve that easily. And black also needs to come up with the plan. So black starts with the move rook to f2 ca, and then rook e1, and then queen to d8, basically moving the queen all the way back and trying to give space for the other plan, which is trying to break in the queen side. Again, this queen was not doing too much, it's just attacking the pawn. We cannot bring more attackers to the pawn, so it's trying to remaneuver the pieces and then go for this b5, a5, b4 pawn breaks. Bishop d1 was played, b5, bishop c2. Now what white is preparing with these maneuvers is trying to go for e4 pawn break. But black anyway went for b4 anyway, allowing this double pawns, because what black understood was after getting the double pawns, white will not be able to push for e4 afterwards. Their pieces will still be a little bit more stuck. Mainly they will not get any open or semi-open files where black can try to strike in this queen side first. So white played knight e5, targeting this knight. Black played bishop d6, trying to go for more trades along the e5. Queen c2, targeting the f5, and then knight e4. Even though it kind of allows f3, black calculated another variation which kind of eventually puts this knight in a good place. First here black traded the knight for the bishop. After d cross e5, the knight got to the c5 square, and then now it gets a beautiful outpost on the d3 square. Again, even if they take with the bishop, still there is this knight c5 move. Using the tactics, we are just like able to play that move, and then we get the knight, the d3 outpost. Even though it loses the pawn, like which happened in the game, after de5, knight c5, white went on to win the pawn. This outpost is like at the moment is little bit more valuable. That's what black considered like that. So black went for knight d3, targeting the rook and the pawn on b2. And then white played e6, trying to give up the exchange right away. Again, at this moment, they are mainly focusing on the counterplay. There is no, if we were to take, and then like it becomes much more problematic for even black. It's not like completely losing, but the problem is kind of leaving this pawn for too long could be like a little bit more trouble for black. So in the game, after e6, black decides to first take the pawn. After queen e6, king h8, still black is threatening both of them. White played king h2. White is basically saying I'm ready to sacrifice the rook. But black did not take the rook. Black just went ahead and take the pawn. Because what black is saying is, okay, this rook is not doing too much, but this knight can be a little bit more powerful in later helping the pawn to promote. So cb4 was played, knight d3, b5, starting to create counterattacks, and then black just took the bishop. Again, from the positional point of view, opponent kind of understood, okay, like here, if I can take this, and this is also much better, but he kind of feels like if I take with this, I will get like two connected post pawns. These things could help much more than getting an exchange up in that position. So he decides to take the bishop. After ef4, he played the move knight d4. Again threatening knight c2 and also the queen. White stops that by playing queen to g6. Queen to f8 was played. Target is queen takes f4, knight f1, and then black just took the pawn. King h1, knight cross b5. Right now both the pawns are ready to roll in the position, and white played knight e3, targeting the pawn. And here black played knight c3 in order to protect this, but that is a very kind of beautiful line here. Like if black could have played d4, but there is one little problem in that variation that they have to foresee, which is white has this nice little tactical idea. After knight takes c4, rook takes c4, rook to e8, where they can win the knight back. But the problem with that is, even though they want the material back, the material is equal, this pawn at the moment is kind of becoming unstoppable with the move like d3, even if white tries to stop it, with d2 followed by rook to c1, with the threats of taking, and then even if white defends it, we can just try to take and then go for the queen trade. Think about that in the other way around. So this is a completely a winning idea if it were to happen, but to foresee this, it's not only a kind of little bit difficult. Most of the time in the calculation, what could happen is after d4, the players might have did not like this. They are losing the knight back with, and they're not even gaining any material. So in the game, instead of d4, black decides to just play the move knight c3 to protect the pawn, and rook c1. Now d4, because now the same variation will not work out. After takes rook e8, there is nothing hanging on b5 square. The knight is already moved, it's safe. So that's the plan. d4, white played the move knight to f5, threatening mate in 1. Black played rook c7, rook c2. Black brought the rook to f8, threatening the knight. Rook e8 was played, forcing the exchange of rooks. After that, king h7. Even though the king kind of seems a little bit open at this point, this king is safer. There are not too many checks at immediately white can do. But white has a very little devious plan here, which is knight to e7. There is no one more checks, but there is a mating thread, which seems almost unstoppable. But Akopian calculated until this point. He decided to actually sacrifice the rook and then say, I have two post pawns and a knight for the rook. Again, technically, we have only one pawn and a knight, but even though they have the two post pawns, it's just more than enough as a compensation. So black played knight d5, trying to start to push the pawns forward. Queen c5 was played, and then knight e3, targeting the rook as well. And at this point, white decides to sacrifice the rook. Their plan is, okay, like right now, if you take me, we will go towards the equivalent game. Even though you have a post pawn, I can try to blockade you and then eventually bring my king. Try to sort of slow down this pawn. It can, if white plays also correctly objectively, it can more or less end in a draw. But what Akopian noticed is, okay, here it's not only about the taking this rook. Their king also becomes under trouble. So he made use of their king's position. So he played queen g3, threatening a mate in 1. White defended with rook to c2. Again, black did not take. Black just went for continuous attack. Check. King h2, d3. In not taking, because if they take, the same sort of story goes. They will start counterattacking and then it could end in a draw. d3, starting to push the pawns forward. Queen d4, a final cheeky attempt. But if you are thinking about taking this in either way, okay, first of all, like taking with the knight, we will just lose the pawn. Taking with the pawn, there is this amazing saving resource with queen e4 followed by queen e1. With the perpetual checks going back and forth, the game will end in a draw. Even if white were to decide to block with g6, he will not escape from this jail. Just check, check, check. So that's it. So in the game, after queen e4 was played, black did not take, black did not fall for the problem. Black just played knight to f1. After king to g1, he just even played knight to g3, setting up a nice little trap. After king h2, d cross c2. This is the point of whole trap. Even though right now it seems like, okay, right now isn't black losing the pawn? Yes, this is the whole trap Akopian was actually building up around this time. Queen d3. Right now, after king moves to h8, white cannot actually take. That's the reason for black's knight maneuver all along. Right now, black can just use this knight f1 check. And after king h1, knight e3, white will lose the queen. So he was setting up the trap. So after king h2, he just took the pawn. But white played queen d3 anyway. After king g8, queen b3, trying to target the pawn one more time. Black just played king h8, and seeing that like there is no more checks at this point, Kamsky resigned. At, as I meant, like there is no more checks. It's like there is only one check. If we were to even give the check, checks are stopped. The pawn is about to promote, and as we have already seen, they can't take due to the knight f4 knight e3 idea, by which white loses the game. So that's how black won the game, nice and clear. And this game was also like a very important thing to explain how you can positionally dominate the London system from the black's perspective. We will try to go back to some crucial moments. One of the important moment was going for queen b6 earlier, targeting this, and after closing the center, and this little trappy move, you have to remember bishop f5. After that, we can trap the rook, and make sure to not get into any sort of checkmate on the c8 square. In some variations, if the knight is not yet developed, there could be, you should not just play the move just because you have seen it somewhere. In the game, actually, you should calculate even if you are getting some similar positions. So this is one critical moment. After that, this prophylactic move was great. And then how he actually came up with another plan, which is I have to bring the pieces towards the queen side. My play is on the queen side, and then brought the queen back. Went ahead with the pawn breaks, allowing double pawns to stop white's counterplay. And this whole sequence of like knight c5, knight d3 also is very great. And one more important moment in the final stages is he even finally decides to take the bishop in order to, he will get the two connected pausers, which eventually helped Akopian to win the game. And the pawns started to roll, and he was also like very careful not to let any perpetual checks happen at the end as well. He had one poised pawn, he just made sure he was able to win with that one poised pawn itself. So that's how the game eventually got ended. It also kind of gives us a nice idea about like how we can also try to play some similar setups. And I hope you learned some practical ideas to counter the London system as well, and a lot of middle game plans as well. I will see you guys in the other video with some another great game, or with some another potential opening plans or some strategical videos as well. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.